Well, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ryan Johnson, and I am the Client Solutions Manager here at My Catholic Faith Delivered. And we are going to be doing some training today on catechists within our platform. So we've done a lot of training over the last few weeks, specifically geared towards DREs or kind of faith formation directors. But today we're going to be focusing on catechist. We're going to walk through really what a catechist sees and how they can manage their classes moving forward. So you should be able to see my screen, and you'll see that I am logged in, and I am logged in as a test instructor. So this is what an instructor will see when they log in for the first time. They will have access, instructors do, to the student material, which we're going to walk through here in just a second, as well as the resource kit, which we'll also walk through. And those are going to appear right here on their dashboard. So they have very easy access to these right away. And the difference here you'll see is this material here, the one that just says First Grade Our Heavenly Father, RV4, is going to be the actual student material. And then the one that is the resource kit is going to be the Parish Catechist Manual and the Teacher's Guide. The administrator at your parish will set up the group and set up your students and classes and enroll you as an instructor. And when you log in as an instructor, this is what you're going to see. So if you'd like to look at the student material, you can of course click begin, and that's going to take you into the student material. Now, you'll notice here you have all of the lessons just like the student does, and you also have the student and family resources that we're giving away to students and their families for free. So you can click on that, and just to take a look at those resources to start, the students have access to the activity book, and they also have access to the family guide. And you can see that when you navigate through these lessons, you can click next page down here in the corner, and this gets you into the family guide first. So you can page through it, of course, and look at it. It's a great resource, and you have access to that just like the families do. And then you also have access to the student activity book. And you can see if I just kind of scroll, it kind of gives me previews. And once I'm done with that, I can exit, and that I can always go back to that and utilize that as needed. Now, if I want to go in, let's say I'm getting ready for lesson 1. I'm going to be teaching that as a catechist, and I'd like to view lesson 1 as a student. I can just go ahead and click lesson 1, and I can actually go through the material. And this is the exact same material the student will have. So the beginning prayer, the pre-assessment, the flashcards, the post-assessment, all of the videos, all of that is available there for you. And the way that you move through it is just by clicking next page here in the corner. And this is the same way that your students will move through it. All of it is voiced over. So you can listen to it. And it's just really, really helpful. And you have a couple ways to get out. Let's say I'm done looking at this, and I want to if I want to return to the course because I want to look at a different lesson, I can click the return to course button that falls up here at the top. Or when I'm in it, I also can click, there's an exit button over here. So the return to course is going to take me back to kind of the table of contents lesson screen. And the exit button is actually going to take me out of it completely and back to my dashboard where I started, back to the Learn page. So you can see here that I've worked through 3% of the material. The other thing that I have access to as a catechist right away when I log in for all catechists is going to be the resource kit. So I can click into that and we can look at that. And you'll see that for each of the lessons, and then we have it broken down into chapters, the user will have access to both the catechist manual and the family guide as well. So, and you can see here that as they move into the actual chapters, they have access to the teacher's manual here as well. So in order to view it, you'll just click, chapter 1, and that's going to bring up the chapter 1 of first grade resource kit page. So I can download it. And it may take a second to load. My internet is running a little bit slow today. But when it does, I'll have access to be able to view those pages. So let's just see if I can get one to load. It's kind of having some trouble today. Here we go. So here's lesson 2 loaded. So I have this material. It's 9 pages. I can download it to my computer. And then I also can just review it here and maybe pick out some stuff that I'd like to use when I'm teaching the material. So this is really, really helpful. And we know that times are very challenging just in general with COVID, but we also know that faith formation has other challenges when you don't have the students necessarily in the classroom. And so we want to provide you with as many resources as we can that hopefully makes your job as easy as possible, or gives you ideas of activities you can do, questions you can ask, ways you can engage the students in a deeper and more meaningful way with the material, so we can continue to form them despite the despite the challenges that we currently face. So this is a great resource, and for catechists, you can utilize that. And I'm not going to go through each of these pages, but you can get down and there's supplemental lessons, there's vocabulary, there's prayers, there's additional quizzes. I mean, all of the information, if you were to go and buy the family guide, the parish catechist manual, the teacher's guide, if you were to go buy those from Ignatius Press, you would get the same exact material that we have here. So it's just a great resource, and I hope that you and as catechists will take advantage of it. So once again, if I want to return to activities because I want to look at something different, I can click here, and you'll see that when it says complete, it just means that I viewed it. That's really all it's looking for. And just because it's complete does not mean you can't go back and look at it again. You can always go back and look at that. It's just telling you it's complete in the sense that you've viewed it at some point in time. So I could click into another chapter if I wanted to, or if I want to close out and go back to that Learn page, I can click the X here, and it's going to take me back to the Learn screen. Now, whenever you land in the site, you'll always land on the dashboard, and you're going to have your most recent courses, so you'll see where you're at, and you can continue and kind of pick up where you left off. So there's a lot of really good information there. You can click on your Learn page, which was where we just were as a catechist, and that's going to really show you the same view. The only time the Learn page can be helpful is if you're a catechist in multiple classes. Not all of your classes may show on the dashboard, and that's just because we only show 3 or 4 courses there, because we don't want it to get overwhelming and super long, where if you have a bunch of classes, that takes up that whole page. So if it'll always show the ones you most recently viewed, but if you have additional ones that you need to look at, always go to your Learn page, and that's going to show you everything that you have assigned to you. So right now I only have 2, but if I had 4 or 6, it would show across here in a very similar format, and I could pick the one that I would like to utilize. So there's a lot of great benefit to coming to your Learn page for that purpose if you are a catechist in multiple grades. The other thing that is really helpful is up across the top, and we're just going to kind of move through these just to talk through your different options as a catechist. But one of them is resources, and you have a couple of different options. The first one that you have is library, and this is extremely helpful and something we would recommend for all of the catechists. So there's a sample kind of schedule for Faith and Life for 1st through 8th grade that you can utilize. So it just kind of gives you, due dates that you can put in, the lessons, corresponding chapters in the actual physical textbook, and it just gives you something that you can utilize as you work with your students. So there's some resources here. There's also the Diocese of Lincoln, Nebraska mandates Faith and Life across the diocese, and they've shared with us some different website links that they have in order to offer some additional resources. And this may take a second here to load, but there are links in here. Let's see if we can get it to load this time. There it is. My internet's just running a bit slow. Well, I don't know what happened. Let's try that one more time. So you can see here is the additional resources, and for each of the grades, grade 1, you can click on the link, and that's going to take you out to a website where they have a bunch of additional resources that you can use. So you can always click return to library, and you can see there's some stuff about sacramental prep if you're in 2nd grade. There's a whole guide for instructors. So if you are an instructor or a catechist, we have a whole document that will walk you through everything that we're walking through today. It's going to give you all of those resources, and you can download that document to your computer. It's a PDF, just getting started for administrators. So there are just so many resources in here. The last thing that I'd like to point out is we have the scope and sequence documents for each of the grade levels. So this can help you with lesson planning. I'll click on one. But you can see here, it has the 1st grade curriculum. It has for each chapter the topic, what is kind of the proclamation, what are the supporting topics and related topics, the aims of the lesson. So really a great resource for you to use as you are lesson planning. The library is, the stuff in the library here is specific to instructors. All users have access to the library in some way, but the content that shows up there is different depending on your role. So if you're just a learner, there might be a getting started guide for parents that you can access and view and use. If you're an instructor, you're going to have information that's pertinent to you being an instructor or catechist. And if you're in more of an administrative role, you might have documents there that are more suited to your administrative role. So we really have it kind of segmented, so you only see the documents that you really need to see or are pertinent to you, and you don't see a bunch of stuff that you may not use or just kind of clutters up your screen. It's also, all of this material is available, or there's a way to change your language to Spanish. So if you have a student that would prefer to do the material in Spanish or would be more comfortable in that way, you can have them actually click up here on their name, and they can go to their settings. And in their settings, they're able to actually change their language from English to Spanish. And in doing so, that will change the material within the lessons, the voiceovers and everything will turn that to Spanish, so they could go through the material in Spanish, but the base material stays the same. It's more just the language of their choosing. As far as questions about Spanish parents, we do have some resources for that. And as you have questions or those things come up, we would be happy to share the resources that we do have, that you would be able to share with them. So if there's specific questions or concerns, or there's something that's specific that's needed for a parent who might be more comfortable speaking or reading or writing in Spanish, just let us know, and we can work, find ways to work with you to try to make sure that we accommodate those parents as well. You also have my content, so a user can upload specific content. If there are certain things, you can see I have a little bit of content here, but the user is able to add content, or if they add content as a part of a collaboration, which we'll show here in a bit, it shows up here. So this is just a view. You won't use this much, but we do like to bring that up. And the last thing is you have a journal. All users have a journal. And the journal can't be viewed by anyone else. It's specific to you. So you can incorporate that with the students if you'd like. All students and catechists have resources journal, and they can just create a new entry, and they can put a topic, and they can type their entry in. Like I said, this is not viewable by admins or instructors, so it really is personal to the student, but it's possible to utilize that if you would like. Up across the top as we move along, so we talked about dashboard, where you first land every time, you have access to your most recent courses. Talked about learn, where you can see all of the courses you're enrolled in and have access to that. And then we've talked about resources and how to access some of the other things that might be helpful to you as a catechist being able to teach the students. The next thing that you have is collaborate, and collaborations is really where you can, in a safe environment, create threads, collaboration threads that users can respond to in your class. So you could ask them to watch a YouTube video and give their thoughts on it, or you could take a quote from a homily from Pope Francis, and you could put that there and have them respond with their own thoughts on it. Or you could take a current event and ask them to view it within the context of what you're working on. There's a lot that you can do with it. So you'll click collaborations, and in collaborations, you'll see that there's group threads, which would be something that the DRE could start for everyone in your parish that's in the system to respond to. And you as a catechist will not be able to start these, only because that's really more of an administrative function. However, if there are threads here that are have been created, you would be able to respond to those here. Now you also have across the top here, you have group threads, and you have a button for class threads. And class threads is where you can create a thread that is specific for the class that you are teaching or classes that you are teaching. And the way that you'll do that is you'll click Start New Thread. Now, once I get here, I'm able to enter a subject, I'm able to select a class, and I'm able to put in the information. So right now I'm only a user in one class. So you can also upload content or embed a social media post if you'd like, and it pulls that data into our system. Then you can go ahead and post that. But and I don't know, maybe I'm not sure why my user is having some trouble there. But if you have questions about how to start these, or I need help with that, we're happy to do that. You'll also find in the library and in the specific instructor guide, the Getting Started Guide for Instructors, you'll find instructions on how to handle that. So you'll see here posting collaborations on page 12 is one of the options that is there. So if you kind of scroll down, you should see some information on posting collaborations. So There's a whole guide on that, and it'll walk you through it, and it can be extremely helpful there. So that is information on collaborations. Now, the next thing that you're going to have is reports, and there's a couple of nice features here. The bottom one, my certifications, catechists will not use. So there's really not a need to look at that. The ones that we're going to focus on today are going to be my reports, my transcripts, and group reports. So my reports is just really your report. So this is every user has access to this, and this shows in the particular course, first grade, what I've done and what I have not done. So you can see that I've accessed the student and family resources 100%. I've looked at those. And you can see in Lesson 1, God Our Father, I've only done 26% of that material, and I've only spent less than a minute, about 57 seconds in it. And I've done even less of Lesson 2. I've only been in there about 18 seconds, and I'm only 8% of the way complete. Now, this is a great tool for your parents and for your students to be able to access, because they have their own My Reports. So if mom or dad or the student wants to know what they've done and what they haven't done, they can always click on Reports and My Reports, and they can see this information for themselves, which is amazing. One of the cool things is there's also a link over here on the side, and it's going to say, it says Show. And if I click Show, it's going to tell me what I have and haven't done. So it's going to say I've only viewed 3 of 14 total pages. So there's a lot of work I still have to do here to make sure that I'm able to complete this material. And then here, if I click on the other one, it's going to say I've only viewed 1 of 14 pages, which is certainly a problem. So, if a parent calls you and has questions, I'm going to show you how you can look at the data for yourself. But you also can instruct the parents, hey, you have access to this as well. You can go to Reports and My Reports, and you can see exactly what I see, where your student is, and what they have left to do. So there's a lot of benefit to looking at My Reports, knowing how to use it, and then, of course, knowing how to share that with your families. There's also My Transcripts, and what My Transcripts is just a record of what the student has and has not completed. So you can see here that as an instructor, I'm enrolled, or I'm working on first grade, second grade, and the first grade resource kit, but none of these have yet been completed. I've started them. One was started March 25th, one was started March 19th, and one was started just today on 8/6/2020. And you can see they're all online classes, and at the end, you'll get a final average score once it's complete, and it will show the end date here. So the nice thing is, if a student is in your parish and does Faith in Life for 3 years and then moves to another parish, they could print this report out and take that and show the DRE at their new parish, I have done these courses, and this is kind of my faith formation I've had over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years. And it always remains, no matter whether the user is done with the material or not done with the material, or whether you continue to use this program at your parish, we will always maintain this data. So the student can always log back in and see what they have completed, when they completed it, and can share that with others as needed. So there's a lot of benefit to My Transcript, and it's a great resource that you as a catechist can share with your families, with your parents, to make sure that they know that once their students complete, it will show up on their transcript. And the hope that they take a sense of pride in what they've completed. If they've been in the program for 3 or 4 years, they're going to come here and be able to see all the work they've done, that they've completed first grade and second grade and third grade. And it's all going to be here for them to do that. So there's just a lot of really great material in the transcript. And the last thing is going to be group reports. And this is really where you are able to track your students' progress. So this is one of the most important pieces that you will use as a catechist. When you go to group reports, you are going to see the classes that you are the instructor of. So if you are a catechist of first grade, like I am, you are only going to see the first grade class here. So if you go to group reports and you expect to see 1st through 8th grade, you won't see that. And that's just really important to note, that if you're an instructor on a class, that's really all you will see. And in some ways that's good, because then you don't have to worry about 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. All you're worried about is the classes that you're instructing. So when you come to this page, the first view that you are going to see is an overall view of all of the students that are enrolled in the class. So you're going to see the date that the class was started. So in this case, we created this class in March of 2020. Okay. And the next thing you're going to see is the average total time that your users have spent in the material overall. Okay. So in this case, my students are slacking because the amount of time that they have spent on average in the material since March is 13 minutes and 3 seconds. So that's not very much time, right? And you can see that of the users, I have 14 users in this class. And of those 14 users, only one user has started and no users have completed the course in full. So we have some work to do. I think that's pretty clear looking at our data here that we have some students that are not logging in, that are not doing their material. And so we can now follow up on that. The last thing over here is just going to be the overall status. So, how far along, what's kind of the average percentage complete. So right now you can see that the average percentage complete is less than 1%. So we have a lot of work to do in this class to get them where they need to be. Now your next question is, okay, this is great seeing it at a high level, Ryan. It's cool that I can see this, but I really want to get down into the nitty gritty. I want to see my students and how they're doing. And so what you can do is actually click, this link is a clickable link. So the name of the class is clickable. And I can click this and it's going to show me every single one of my students. So now I can see exactly who has started, how they're doing, and I can get a little bit more of a breakdown. A couple things about these reports that are very important. One, you can print the report by clicking this button, or you can export it to Excel. So you can pull this report out if you would like to share it with your pastor, if you would like to share it with your DRE, if you want to share it, however you want to utilize it, you can. I mean, obviously, when you export that data, you are exporting the students' class data, so you want to be careful about that. But you do have the ability to do it. You also down here, you can see that I have 14 students, but I'm only showing 10 per page. If I'd like to see more per page, I can change this drop down. So I could go down to 5, I'd go up to 20, or if I have a pretty large class, I could actually just click all, and now I'm going to be able to see all of my students. So you can see here that the only person who has actually started the material is test person. And we can see that they started it on March 16th of 2020, but they've only spent about 13 minutes in the material. You can see that the rest of the students have not started at all. So that's problematic. And that's where you would then be able to look and say, okay, right now they all have these test names, but let's say that this was Joe and this was Mary and this was Susan. Well, now you can go to Joe, Mary, and Susan's parents, and you could say, hey, we see that Joe and Mary and Susan haven't yet started the material. We want to make sure you're not having any problems logging in, anything we can do to support you. You're able to really see who has and hasn't started, and it just empowers you to be able to make sure that the kids are getting that formation and you're able to help the families as needed. But let's say that we want to look at the user who has done some work. We want to see what's going on. Well, if we go across, we can see that the date that they've started, we can see the date that they completed it, which in this case, we know that none of our users have completed it yet. But if I finish this course today, it would say 8/6/2020 here, and it would show the date that I finished it. We can see the overall total time that is added up that they've spent in all of the material in each of the lessons. And then we can see their average pre-score. So we give a pre-assessment when they start every single lesson. And that is to judge, what does the student know when they first get into the material, before they've had any instruction, how much do they know? And then we also do a post-assessment. So we look at their post-assessment and we say, okay, at the end of the lesson, we're going to assess you again, and we're going to see if you do better or worse. And ideally, the user might maybe have a lower pre-assessment score, but after they go through the material, we would hope that the post-assessment score would be higher, which would then indicate that learning took place. They struggled at the beginning when they had no knowledge of the material with some of these questions, and by the end, they got 100% on the post-assessment. And then we also track a best score, and that's because a user can come back and take the post-assessment multiple times. And so if they come back and they take it again and they get 100%, we want to acknowledge that, and we want to give the user credit for coming back and taking it again and getting a better score than they had gotten before. But we will always keep the first post-assessment score. And that's just to make sure that you can look at the pre-assessment and you can look at the post-assessment, and you have the ability to understand What did they know when they first started, and what did they know the first time they took the post-assessment? Now, at a high level, these are just averages of everything they've completed. But if you wanted to go a level deeper, you want to say, okay, I actually want to look at test person's individual lessons. Then you can click on test person's name, and it's going to show you each lesson. So you can see here that test person has not looked at the student and family resources. So we had a question earlier. I think it was Haida that asked this, which was a great question. How can we tell if they've looked at the student and family resources? And this is a great place right here. If it's 0% with 0 minutes spent in the lesson, then we know they have never looked at the student and family resources. However, if there's time in there, if there's a completion, then we can determine based on looking at it that yes, they have in fact looked at those student and family resources. Now, if you look down here, you can see lesson 1. I finished the test user finished lesson 1 on March 25th of 2020. And you can see that they really didn't spend very much time in it. I mean, they only spent 3 minutes in the lesson. As a guide, most of these lessons should take about 30 to 40 minutes to complete fully. And that's if the user watches all the video, watches listens to the music, spends some time doing it, 30 to 40 minutes, right? So 3 minutes is obviously not very much time. But you can see here that on the pre-score, when our test person took the pre-assessment, they got a 60%. So there was obviously some gaps in knowledge, some stuff that they didn't know. And when they came back and they took the post-assessment, we can actually see that they got 100%. So that's good. We should be very happy with that because we know that learning took place. On the converse, in lesson 2, we see that on the pre-assessment, they got 80%, and they hustled through the lesson because they only spent 7 minutes and about 38 seconds in the material. And we can see that they got a 30% on their post score, so that's a problem. And you might be asking yourself, well, what did they miss on the post assessment? How do I look at their actual scores or what they might have struggled with? And what you can actually do is click on the lesson, and it's going to show you all of the times they've taken the assessment. So you can see I took the pre-assessment once on 3/25, and you can see I took the post-assessment today on August 6th. Now, if I click on the post-assessment, it's actually going to pull up the student's assessment, so I can see exactly what they answered. So on question 1, right off the bat, look, the question was heaven is blank's home, and the correct answer is God's, and they answered the devil's home. So we have some work to do with this student. I'm telling you, we may have to really work with them because they're certainly struggling or answering it incorrectly. However, question 2, heaven is a place of perfect happiness, and perfect was the correct answer. So they got that right. We can see exactly up here at the top what was the correct answer and then what was their answer. So this is where you can, if you have a student that is really struggling with something or does really poorly on an assessment, you can actually dig into the data and find out why. And then you can go back and help that. You could help that student, or you could, you could look at multiple students, and if you found that multiple students struggled with a particular concept, well, when you do a Zoom meeting or you get those students together, now you can do an activity that tries to enhance learning around those topics because that's the area of weakness for your students. So there's just a lot of benefit to being able to have this data. Now, let's say you get back to this screen and you determine that you want to go back, you want to look at test person's data again, but you don't want to look at this lesson. We call these breadcrumbs, and that's because you can kind of follow them back. So you see here that this is gray, which is the page that I'm on. But if I want to go back to the level I was just on, I click here. And now I'm back in the page before where you have the different lessons. And let's say I want to go back to that higher level where I can see all of my students again because I want to look at a different student. And just like Hansel and Gretel, I follow the breadcrumbs back, right? So this is sort of the process that you can go through. And then let's say you want to look at a different student, you click on that student, and now you're on this page again. You can click in, you can look at, there's no assessments here for this particular lesson. So you can click back out and you can follow the breadcrumbs back. And then you can get all the way back even to the highest level with the classes. So it's really pretty easy, but it's also just making sure that kind of the right places to click. So that is really a preview of a lot of the reporting. And obviously this only has this only has one, one user that has material or data, as they've started. But as you get students in your class, you're going to have multiple, you're going to have, this data is really going to be populated and you'll have a lot of data to work with. Up here you have store. You're not really going to use the store. That's really more for your administrator. So we're not going to cover any of that today. The last tab we're going to cover is the instructor tab. So there are a couple of tabs here. First of all, you have My Classes. And My Classes is really just another form of that group report. So you can see here, I see the start date, how many have completed, total, and then that status bar. And I can click in here and I can see some information. The one nice thing that you will get on the Instructor My Classes tab is the last login date. So you can see who's logging in and you can actually sort by last login. So if you want to find, who are the users that have logged in, the longest time period ago, you can, sort it to be able to, by clicking on that top menu bar, to be able to see that. So there's a lot of benefit there. And then you can click in and you can kind of see some information on the person and you can resend their login email from here. And you also can change their name. So let's say that, the name was put in by the DRE as Billy, but Billy would like to go by Bill. Let's just, as an example, then you could go ahead and type in Bill here and click submit. You also have the ability, if the parent's email address, which is what you'll find in the secondary email, if that is wrong or it's changed or they'd rather have it go to grandma or grandpa or whoever it might be, you can change that here and click submit. Once those changes are made, if you need to send the login email because, mom or dad or whoever it is contacts you and says, hey, Bill's having trouble logging in. We don't know Bill's password. He forgot it. Then you can actually click send login email here, and that's going to send that login email out to Bill. And it actually will go, you can see here that this is the username that Bill logs in with. And you can see this is not a real email address. It looks like one, of course, but it's actually not a real email. And the reason for that is because we comply with all federal laws, including the COPA law, which is a child protection law related to minors' use of the internet. And it basically, one of the tenets of that is that we don't correspond directly ever with a student or with a minor. So all of the email correspondence will always go to a parent or guardian. And that's to make sure the parent or guardian knows what their child's doing on the internet and is able to keep them safe, of course, but also to make sure that the parents have the information they need to effectively be those teachers of the faith and to help you in making sure their students are getting their work done. So this email here is extremely important because that's where we're going to send everything. It's going to be to the parent. And once again, if you want to go back, you follow the breadcrumbs, right? So we talked about that earlier. Always follow the breadcrumbs back. So I can click here. Now I'm back to my students. Let's say that this person's name was Mary and mom and dad reached out and said, hey, Mary's name is wrong. I can go in here and I can change it. Once I've changed it, I can go ahead and follow the breadcrumbs back to that front page. Lastly, under instructor, you do have something called locked out users. This is going to show users that are locked out. So users, one thing that's really important is when we first sign a user up and we send them their login email for the first time, which is what your DRE will do, and we've done a lot of training on that. When they send the login email for the first time, the students will get credentials to log in for the first time, and the parents will also get a consent email. And essentially that consent email just asks the parents to review our privacy policy and our terms of use, letting them know, what data we collect on their child, what we do with the data, that we'll never sell the data, etc. Just important information that, in the spirit of transparency that we want the parents to have. And the parents have to grant consent for their child to use the platform because, well, that's another a major tenet of the COPA law is that the parents have to grant consent for their child under 13 to use any online technology. If after 7 days the parents have not granted consent, we do lock the student's account, and that's to ensure that we can get parental consent because it's very important to us that we keep kids safe and we comply with necessary rules and regulations. So if the student gets locked out and then, there is there is a way to unlock it. The other reason a student could get locked out is that they have put in their password multiple times incorrectly. So if the user puts their password in 5 times and it's not correct, the system will lock them out. And that does happen less frequently with the older kids, but with children in 1st or 2nd grade, it does happen. So if a child gets locked out in your class, you can always come in here, you can click activate. That's going to unlock their account for them. So it's just a way for you, if mom or dad or parent or guardian or grandma or grandpa calls and says, hey, Mary is locked out. Mary entered her password wrong too many times. Can you help me out? You can go to instructor, then locked out users, and you can go ahead and activate it and say, yep, thanks for reaching out. Mary's been reactivated, and you're good to go. So there's a lot of really good benefit there to being able to unlock the accounts for your users. The last tab that you have is communication. And with communication, this allows you to, if you click on the class here, it does allow you to send reminder emails. So the reminder email just basically says, hey, I'll show you here. You can click next to the names of the students you want to send it to, and you can click send emails, which will send it, or you can preview it. But basically, it just says, be sure to continue where you left off. So it's a great way to kind of remind students that maybe haven't logged in a little while. Hey, Mary, you haven't logged in a while, may want to log in and keep going. You can certainly reach out to the parents directly, but this is just built in where you're able to send those without a lot of work on your part. So you can just select the users that you'd like to send it to, and you can go ahead and in this case, we'll just select this user and we'll say we're going to send emails, and it's going to say you're about to send 1 email. Would you like to continue? And you can say, okay. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and may God continue to bless you and in your ministry. So thank you so much, and we'll be talking to y'all soon.